am Carol Angela Davis. Welcome to Impact Networks News. Let's begin with Jared Kushner. All right. An apartment company partly owned by Jared Kushner is starting evictions early. Why wait to put someone out of their home? Westminster Management owns a lot of housing there in Baltimore, Maryland, and it has submitted hundreds of eviction filings in court against tenants with past due rent in a pandemic. And a lot of the tenants live on low and middle incomes, and some of the tenants told the Washington Post that they're behind in their rent because they lost their jobs due to the pandemic. That doesn't stop Jared. Maryland's moratorium on evictions was renewed on October 29th, so cases cannot proceed because of that CDC ban on evictions, but families can be evicted once the moratorium expires, and that's going to happen on December 31st. So, of course, Jared is getting a jump on tossing people out. Last year, Maryland's Attorney General sued Westminster, alleging that the company collects illegitimate fees and for applications and for evictions and illegally claims tenant security deposits. What a scoundrel. All right, Westminster paid Jared Kushner $1.65 million in 2019. That's according to Jared's government filings, and we know his government disclosure form is never correct. He's constantly having to amend it, so he got his money. Now he's going to throw everybody out. Okay. Let's turn to the climate. The world's soils contain 2 to 3 times more carbon dioxide than the atmosphere. And as you might expect, as global temperatures rise, the rate of decomposition of organic matter also goes up because things are going to decompose at a greater rate as things get hotter. This means the amount of carbon released from the soils also rises. But if we return 30% of ecosystems to their natural state, guess what, folks? That's going to soak up so much carbon dioxide, get this, that it's going to be like reducing by 49% all of the carbon that has built up in our atmosphere over the last 200 years. Get behind Joe Biden's climate plan, whatever it is, we got to do it. And it might be ugly in the beginning, but we got to do it. Let's go to the Arctic, where the Arctic ice is melting. What's under that ice is what's scary, because when that ice melts, and it's been frozen for like 1,000 years, what the heck is under that? Some animal we've never heard of that's now going to start decomposing, and oh my goodness, okay? That stuff's going to start to seep out. Oh my goodness, okay? The United States Geological Survey says the sediments in the Arctic contain a lot of frozen methane and other gases known as hydrates. That's right. Methane is a huge problem, folks, because its warming effect is 80 times stronger, yes, than carbon dioxide over a 20-year span. The United States Geological Survey is listing this gas as one of the 4 most serious scenarios for abrupt climate change. The Arctic temperature is now rising more than twice as fast as the global average. And don't forget, we talked about this. Temperatures in Siberia, supposed to be real cold, were 5 centigrades higher than average this year from January to June. That's a problem. Let's go to the vote. U.S. voters approved sweeping measures that will restore voting rights to tens of thousands of people on parole. Also will rein in the power of police departments, and also will ease some of those drug laws. We'll take a quick look at them. One of the biggest victories in California, where Proposition 17 passed. It allows about 50,000 people on state parole to vote after completing their prison sentences. Also, folks, in New Jersey, Arizona, South Dakota, and Montana, they voted to legalize recreational marijuana. As I've told you before, Oregon decriminalized small amounts of cocaine, heroin, and other drugs, hoping to reduce the number of people locked up for low-level drug offenses. Let's go to Nebraska, Utah, and Alabama. They voted to erase racist language from their state constitutions. Nebraska and Utah removing the language allowing slavery and involuntary servitude as criminal punishments. Alabama voters approved an amendment to drop language that mandated racial segregation in some institutions, including public schools. We're glad you did it, but folks, you're late to the party there. Pushes for more police accountability were successful in San Francisco and San Diego. We should tell you in Pittsburgh, Portland, Oregon, and Columbus, Ohio, those districts favored measures that will create or expand civilian-run police oversight boards. And in Michigan, voters overwhelmingly approved a state constitutional amendment that limits police powers by requiring law enforcement officers to get a search warrant, okay, before accessing your electronic data. All right, let's take a look at your health. Measles deaths have soared worldwide, folks. You better get that vaccination. Too many people are not getting the measles vaccination. Now, measles deaths are at their highest level in 23 years, and that does come to us from the CDC and the World Health Organization. Now, the global death tally for 2019 was 207,500. That's 50% higher than just 3 years earlier, and officials are worried that the pandemic is just going to make things worse. In business news, more retail bankruptcies are on the horizon, of course, due to the pandemic. All right, now Italian luxury goods company Furla, which has been around since 1927, it's filed for Chapter 11. Department store chain Century 21, it's filed for bankruptcy, says it's closing 13 locations. 100-year-old J.C. Penney closing 350 stores. 112-year-old Steinmart filed for bankruptcy, expects to close almost all of its 300 stores. Lord & Taylor, the oldest U.S. department store, founded in 1826, filed for bankruptcy. Ascena Retail, that's Ann Taylor and Lane Bryant, filed for bankruptcy protection, as did the paper store. And then Retail, New York & Company, their retail parent, it filed for bankruptcy, says it's going to close 378 stores. Brooks Brothers filed for bankruptcy, and 85-year-old GNC filed for bankruptcy and says it's going to close 1,200 stores across the U.S. Does that sound like America got made great again? It's a doggone shame. Well, now we got a chance. All right, then we're moving on. In the true American spirit of the day, folks, we need to stop making money matter more than anything else, because that's what's going on right now. Now, what if you are a diabetic? Trump issued executive orders in 2020. They were supposed to cut the cost of medicine, particularly the cost of insulin, to, quote, pennies a day. That's what they told us. It didn't happen. And now diabetics are having to go on GoFundMe to try to afford their insulin, and that is the word from the Guardian newspaper. You should know that the prices of insulin in the U.S. are still 5 to 10 times higher than they are in other countries. And how much does insulin cost? A single vial of insulin, folks, only costs $5 to manufacture. So they're raking in the cash, and people are dying as a result of it. There are 2 million Americans who may have lost their employer-based health insurance due to the pandemic. What are they going to do? Stop. All right, let's go to the Trump administration. Okay, well, the outgoing. All right, it's moving, but it's not stopping. It's moving to freeze wages for hundreds of thousands of seasonal workers. These are farm workers for 2 years. Trump did publish a new rule in the middle of the coronavirus that will freeze wages for hundreds of thousands of seasonal workers, and that is bad news for them, but good news for Trump, folks. That's right, because he has a vineyard in Charlottesville, Virginia, and that vineyard has employed workers on H-2A visas, and under this new law, guess what? Their wages are going to be frozen, but he's going to be able to hire guest workers in unlimited numbers at the frozen wages during 2021 and 22. And if a U.S. farm worker applies for the job, guess what? He or she can be rejected if they demand a higher wage than the required minimum, okay? That's what Trump's doing to workers, so things have not changed, all right? Finally, I want to tell you about marijuana multi-state operator Verano Holdings. It is acquiring Florida-based alternative medical enterprises, AltMed. It's going to create one of the largest cannabis companies in the U.S. with 44 retail locations in 44 states. I am Carol Angela Davis. I thank you for joining me. I'll be right up with my commentary and Ask Dr. K. Thanks for joining me. I am Carol Angela Davis, back with my interview, and I've got a great one for you. I've got Congressman Jim Clyburn. He is the majority whip. You know him. You also know that he's the third-ranking Democrat in the United States House of Representatives, currently serving as the chairman of the House Select Committee on the Coronavirus Crisis. And most importantly, we all know that we are all sitting here breathing a sigh of relief because of what he did to help Joe Biden and Kamala Harris get elected. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's just get right to it, Congressman, and let's talk a little bit about this situation in Wayne County, Michigan. I happen to be from Detroit. This situation in Wayne County, Michigan, where now we're hearing that the president is allegedly telling people, the people who certified the election, but trying to convince them to rescind their votes. What is your comment on that? That sounds very un-American.
It is very un-American, and I think that people have come to expect un-American things from this president. This president has no interest in preserving the integrity of our democracy. And I've not just begun to say that. I've been saying that now for about 3 years. In fact, I did a CNN interview the night before his 2018 State of the Union address. And I said at that time that this president, I likened him unto Mussolini at that time.
Yes.
And it's kind of interesting. I see a lot of people now referring to his stance on the Truman balcony as a Mussolini stance. This president is an autocrat. That's about the kindest thing you can say about him. But he would love to make himself dictator of this country. And if these people up in Wayne County can allow themselves to be complicit in that, I'm just hopeful that the step above them will reverse that decision, because that's what's going on here.
So let me ask you this, because what kind of sanctions? I mean, when you look at the meddling that has gone on all across the entire, he's doing the minions that are supporting him, et cetera, et cetera. What can we do under our Constitution, under our laws, civilly, criminally, whatever it is, in office, out of office, however you want to call it? What can we do to this president to make sure that we set an example and let people know that we're not going to allow our country to be destroyed like this? What are the sanctions available?
Well, I don't know if there's anything we can do to this president because of that the Justice Department ruling that they've been holding to, that you don't really indict a sitting president. I think they are applying that to almost everything. But he will not be a sitting president after January 20th.
Absolutely.
And as of that time, I think that irrespective of what Joe Biden may do or not do, I hope that the state of New York will do what I know they've got the goods to do.
Now that's the prosecutions about some of his financial transactions. What about, are there sanctions for the work that has been done to subvert the vote once he's out of office? Are there criminal sanctions available for that you know of?
Well, you'd have to do the investigations. For instance, I've already seen some pretty astute lawyers saying that what Lindsey Graham did regarding the Secretary of State down in Georgia could very well be a violation of a law. There have already been some ethics complaints filed against him, but there may be some criminal complaints coming as well. And I do believe that those people up in Wayne County had better be very, very careful because who knows, a very good investigator might even be able to find that they've stepped across the line. So we'll just have to wait and see. I don't like to pass a judgment on these things without having, without knowing the facts. So we have to get the facts.
Okay. Now, let's talk about, you talked about stepping across the line. Let's talk about the line, because we held the line here in the United States. People turned out to vote in record numbers and astonishing numbers. And now the democratic process goes on. We got the Georgia Senate race, we know about that, but we've also got the democratic process as a whole, because really the hard work is just beginning. What is your message to Americans in terms of what their posture should be now that they have turned the election for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris?
Well, I think we should stay engaged in this process. We had a big victory back in 2008 with the election of Barack Obama. And then in 2010, we didn't show up.
Right.
And as a result, all that was gained in the 2-year period was lost. And that's not the first time that's happened. In 1992, Bill Clinton got elected and everybody was ecstatic about that. And then in 1994, we lost everything because people didn't show back up to vote. I did a little analysis of that. And what I found out was that the Republicans had a resounding victory in 94 and had the same vote that they had in 92 and was defeated. That's because our people did not show back up. Now we showed up, and as we say sometimes, and showed out on November 3rd.
Yes, we did.
Let's don't repeat that mistake and not show up in 2 years, because this victory will be hollow if we allow the loss of the House to take place in 2 years.
And let's face it, Congressman, they're counting on us not showing up in 2 years and not showing up in January down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm hoping that on January 5th, those people who went to vote on November 3rd, if all of them come back out, we'll have a victory.
We'll have a victory. And we have to have a victory because truly our nation is in crisis. Now, Congressman, I want to ask you about COVID because it must make you sick to your stomach to sit in Washington and watch Americans die while the current president is frankly, well, Rome is burning, Nero's fiddling. There's just no other way to say it.
You know, this president has abdicated any responsibility of being president. If he cannot dictate something, he will not do it. Yeah. It's just that simple. He is dictatorial in everything. And that's what he tries to emulate. And because he cannot dictate a process by which we can fight this pandemic, he is letting the states do it. And that is not the way you provide national leadership in a democracy. I was taught at a very early age that leaders have to lead by precept and example. This president is long on precepts, extremely short on examples. In fact, he never lays out an example for the people to follow.
It's a terrible attitude that has destroyed our country. And I want to talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, if we could spend some time talking about the representatives that are around the nation that have stood up, like you stood up, and made sure that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were elected. If we could talk a little bit about some of the superstars that we need to make sure we are standing behind and the policies that we need to be standing behind going forward to ensure our democracy.
Well, you know, I always say that the African-American vote in this country, once we got it, which we really got back in 1965 in an effective way, has always been about preserving this democracy. Yeah. This democracy has not always been a democracy for African Americans in this country. But the philosophy of this democracy is exactly what African Americans are working to preserve and to make real for everybody. And so we are very, very strong when it comes to this. So the voters, yeah, there have been quite a few individuals, but I give it to the African American voters for turning up the way they did. That's why Joe Biden has got a 5.5 million vote lead when it comes to the popular vote, which would be a landslide in any other country. Mm-hmm. But because we select our president through the Electoral College, it looks closer than it really is. So I don't think any one of us should be taking credit for anything. Mm-hmm. It was the voters. In fact, I saw someone write something the other day that I think I agree with, that I didn't really persuade anybody to vote for Joe. I was able to articulate exactly what the sentiments were. And coming from me, people who had those feelings, I was able to validate Joe Biden. That's all it was. It was a validation. As the lady said to me the Friday before I made the endorsement, she said, when she asked me who I was going to vote for, and I told her, she said, I needed to hear that. And this community needs to hear from you.
Yes, and we thank you so much for your service to this country. This is Congressman Jim Clyburn, folks. You know him. He represents South Carolina's 6th Congressional District. He is the majority whip, the 3rd ranking Democrat in the U.S. House of Representatives. And we thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to join us here on Impact Network News. I am Carol Angela Davis. Thank you so much, Congressman. We hope you'll come back and talk with us again.
Look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Make sure you get out there. If you're in Georgia, you know what to do. I'm Carol Angela Davis. Well, I am Carol Angela Davis, and I am back with you with my commentary for the day. Folks, imagine calling the woman who is the Vice President-elect of the United States of America a hoe. Oh, yes, he did. Yes, right, folks. A major insurance company in Louisiana is facing a boycott after the CEO referred to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden as power-hungry Joe and the hoe. Yes, he did. Now, you know he ought. Okay. His name is Greg Tremonton. He's head of Go Auto Insurance. Check your policy. And now a community activist named Gary Chambers down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, he says this, quote, white men in power struggle to respect anyone else but other white men in power. They can't grasp that anyone else is competent enough to lead. Greg and his business should feel this. Okay? All right. Chambers is asking black men and women to cancel their insurance policies with Go Auto Insurance and go where they won't be called a hoe. That's right, folks, when they reach the second highest office in the land. Eugene Collins is the president of the Baton Rouge NAACP. He says this, if you can refer to the Vice President-elect of the United States in that way, imagine what he says about everyday folks, unquote. Tremonton has apologized. Of course, he doesn't want to lose his company. White supremacy is a cancer on this country. Newsweek is reporting that some members of the Proud Boys, folks, they are ready to openly embrace being a racist organization. Now, that's different from how they embraced it being down there in Charlottesville and walking around with all those big old guns strapped to their chest and threatening people with all those racially disgusting signs. Now, this is something new. On top of that, they're willing to do. Now, one of the members' names is Kyle Chapman. He wants to replace Proud Boy Chairman Enrique Tarrio. We already know about the oxymoron going on there. And Chapman says this, quote, we will no longer cuck to the left by appointing token Negroes as our leaders. Enrique, you need to rethink that. We will no longer allow homosexuals and other undesirables into our ranks. We will confront the Zionist criminals who wish to destroy our civilization. That's what he said, people. We recognize that the West, he doesn't stop there. We recognize that the West was built by the white race alone. It's laughable. By the white race alone, and we owe nothing to any other race. These people are confused, people. This is a perfect example of misguided and uneducated and frankly ignorant people who have spent their lives standing on third thinking they hit a triple. That's who they are, folks, okay? From the beginning of their education, and this is America's fault. From the beginning of their education, they were not taught the true history of this country, and they actually think that they built Western civilization. Now, first of all, nobody's doing anything on their own, particularly these people who really don't do anything, period. But nobody built Western civilization or any other civilization on their own, and we know it didn't happen in America by the white race because they were sitting on the porch sipping mint juleps, and we were doing all the work. Let's face it, we know the slaves did all the work, and any work that was done by the slaves, so they haven't built anything. And we all know that as a people, we are the greatest innovators of all time. So we also know that while we were building those houses and building those machines and doing all that work, we were innovating all down the line. They just took credit for it. So the true statement is that the one thing that they did do was steal everybody else's work, literally, okay? That's America's fault. America needs to get those history books right so people don't get deceived from day one into thinking that they're more than they are. All right, they have a false sense of reality and they cannot think clearly, and it causes them to believe they are somehow superior because of the color of their skin. It's really shameful. Look at the case in Louisville where the neighbor allegedly painted a swastika and other racist messaging on the driveway of Connie and Michelle Pineda. Now, of course, the Latina and Filipina couple had a security camera, ding dong. All right, so the neighbor, Suzanne Kraft, age 52, she was sentenced to 7 days in jail and house arrest, but that didn't stop Miss Superiority. She got out, and now she's targeting the couple and their 5 kids again. This woman just can't learn anything. The kids are so scared they won't even play in their own yard. The whole family sleeps in the living room. The kids reported that Kraft's 12-year-old child, isn't that a shame, people? She has taught her 12-year-old child to hate. That is pathetic, and that ought to be a crime. The 12-year-old daughter has, this is what the kids say, they called the kids and the kids' siblings racial slurs. They also painted the N-word in the driveway. Kraft threatened to run over the Pineda's kids with a car. These people are just downright evil. All right, the Pinedas face daily threats, including a picture of 2 bullets, which they say have recently been left in the mail with a note that said, "Get out." Okay, now we already know about Get Out because we all saw that movie, so we know what's going on there. Folks, this is America, and we must stop. And Trump's failure to disavow and to frankly support and encourage this kind of activity has left a cancer on our country. And frankly, Trump has got to receive the punishment from the United States for what he has done. He has practically destroyed this country. We're in a lot of trouble. We have to work very hard to come together, and it's going to be difficult. And it's going to start with the truth. And the truth starts in kindergarten, in the first grade, the second grade, in those history books and those stories, and they have to simply be accurate. And we have to tell the truth so that we can all come together, love one another, and move forward as a country. And to the white supremacists, look, you're just going to have to back down and back off. Your information is not correct, and you need to come in line with everybody else. So the sooner you do it, the better it is for you. I'm Carol Angela Davis. Thanks for staying with me. Well, thank you so much for staying with me. I'm Carol Angela Davis, and I'm with Dr. K because we care about your health. Hello, Dr. K. How are you today?
Hello, how are you?
I am fantastic, and I know you are, and got some great information for us in this COVID resurgence thing we find ourselves in. Tell us about that.
Well, we are in the middle of COVID, but remember that the severity of COVID is increased with all the diseases that come with the Western diet, lifestyle, processed foods, diabetes, hypertension, obesity. So your everyday food choices can help you, just in case you get it, control the severity. Please remain vigilant on your food choices. Okay. But you know, Carol, the real thing that I want to talk about today is we're hearing all this news about the vaccine. And I just wanted to talk about it a little bit so that people know exactly what's going on. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
The Chinese released the gene sequence for the vaccine very early on a year ago. And when they did that, they set in motion that all over the world, companies could use that to find a vaccine. So now what we're seeing is that 2 companies, Pfizer and Moderna, have entered what we call phase 3 trials. And those phase 3 trials are working. So in each case, phase 3 is thousands of people. 30,000, 40,000 have gotten the vaccine, and they deliberately found all the ethnic groups, age ranges, not children, but they deliberately tested it on as many of a variety of patients as they could.
Are we in that, Dr. K?
I beg your pardon?
African Americans, are we in that?
Definitely. African Americans were 10% of the study for Moderna, 20% were Hispanic, 4% Asian, and they actually halted the study to go out and find more communities of color to volunteer. But anyway, so after they did all that, they went and they examined 95 people who had actually gotten COVID. And they found out that of the 5 of the 95 who were vaccinated and got COVID, they actually only got a mild disease.
Wow. So it does work.
It does work. And again, the purpose of a phase 3 trial is to really put it out there in people of all walks of life and see what happens. And not only did it work, but it worked equally as well across ethnicities, across age groups. So this is a very significant finding. Now they're saying that they can get 20 million doses by December. The vaccine comes in 2 doses spaced 3 or 4 weeks apart. So if they say 20 million doses, they really mean 10 million people. So now the conversation at the FDA is, who's the first 10 million? Right. Yeah. So the first 10 million are going to be healthcare workers, the elderly, and there's another population that crosses all ethnicities and age groups that is severely affected by COVID, and those are the disabled. So
Yes.
those will be the first 10 million people to receive the virus. But because the gene sequence has been released, we could have that could receive the vaccine. But because the gene sequence has been released, we could see a Pfizer vaccine, a Moderna vaccine, and there's 10 other companies that are in phase 3 trials where we could see different vaccines all over the world.
Beautiful.
Yes.
I could be back in the comedy club by spring
Exactly.
at my concerts.
Not only that, but by the spring of next year, they expect a significant number of people worldwide to have gotten these vaccines. The government gave Moderna alone $2.5 billion. And Moderna, Pfizer, they have all let it be known that they are planning on selling the doses to the government, even though the government will offer the vaccine free to the citizens. And the doses are $25 a dose. So after getting the money from our tax dollars to develop the vaccine, believe it or not, they're making more money selling it to the government.
Well, we know there's always money in it, unfortunately. Somewhere, but as long as we can get out and kick our heels back up, we're good.
Yes.
So that's so impressive. And Dr. K, because we just have about a minute left, please tell us why it's so important that they had all those ethnic groups, including African Americans, in these phase 3 trials.
Well, the NIH and the federal government acknowledged that this virus is affecting different people in different ways. Now, more so than even ethnicity, the virus is affecting the poor, much more so. So let's just say, will a wealthy African American be in a group of people that's considered vulnerable? We have to wait and see. But we know that poverty is associated with the disease. And the Pfizer vaccine is also entering into the FDA scrutiny. So Moderna and Pfizer are being scrutinized by the FDA. And as soon as they pass that scrutiny, then we go on to develop the virus. Because I also want to make it clear that they have put it out to the public. Their data has not actually been examined by other scientists. So we're waiting for that.
Okay. So we're not there yet, but we're like almost completely there.
We're getting there.
Makes you want, and with a new president and a new vice president-elect, it almost makes you want to break out into God bless America.
Thank you. But Carol, and that's the important thing about the new president, is that on a federal level, you know, they're deciding, will the states control their own vaccines? Will the states be given money to give out the vaccine? Is this a federal government response? And if it is, who is considered priority? And that is
we need fairness in that. And I'm glad we have fairness at the top of the government.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Remain vigilant, people. Remain vigilant.
Thank you so much, Dr. K. And now listen, folks, you know we're keeping you healthy, right? Okay, we're keeping you on top of it. We're doing it. That's because we got Dr. K, all right? So Dr. K will be back. And Dr. K, I know you got to get them ready for the holidays. Next week, we're going all the way through New Year's. So we'll be talking to you about the holidays, but I thank you so much for joining us. Dr. K, thank you so much for joining us every week and bringing us that vast amount of knowledge that you have. And you people, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. I'm Carol Angela Davis.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day.